Aaron Alexander. I'm really happy to have you on the show. It's been a long time coming. I think we were just talking about, I was on your podcast when the book came out, 2019, and you flew me. We did acro yoga before you interviewed me for your show, the Align podcast. And just want anyone who's just tuning in on audio only to understand that Aaron Alexander. I'm really happy to have you on the show. It's been a long time coming. I think we were just talking about, I was on your podcast when the book came out, 2019, and you flew me. We did acro yoga before you interviewed me for your show, the Align podcast. And just want anyone who's just tuning in on audio only to understand that you are in fact iconically handsome.
Very nice.
Yeah, those of you who are watching on video, you'll know that for yourselves.
I receive.
So you've dedicated much of your life to, I feel like, aligning people's bodies, allowing them to really, I want to say like treating the body as a temple. I know that's probably a little woo-woo for you.
No, that's fine. It's exactly correct.
But I mean, between breath, mechanics, aligning, working out, light, psychedelics, I mean, you've trained some of the most high-performing people on the planet. You've been like on-set movement coach for movie stars, for fighters, for quarterbacks as they're playing at the Super Bowl. Like, this is really profound what you've done to help people's bodies. And if you believe that the body is in fact a temple or like a home for spirit to animate us, if the body is out of alignment, if we're not breathing correctly, if we're not strong, then how can we fully have this human experience? And so I'm just curious, like, I know that a lot of your attention is on the 3D, but can you speak to the spiritual side of your work? Like, how do you see the 3D realm and the 5D realm merging through the physical body?
Thank you for saying all that.
It's true.
I see the way that I would approach that would be that the body is a vehicle that carries the spirit, and it acts as an antenna for communication and words that I wouldn't use so much in my world, depending upon who I was with, but would be like manifestation. You know, it's an antenna for creation. It's an antenna for communication. It's an antenna for manifestation. It's an antenna for attraction. And the very 3D response to that would be just very clearly, you know, body language. When we're communicating to each other, that's how we send signals of trust, signals of connection, signals of rapport, signals of like, oh, like, I get you. Like, I see you're like a part of my tribe. You know, if you're a person that's very stiff and rigid and so you did dancing and acting and such in Broadway. So like theater is a really big part of your life. So you understand this better than most people. To be able to take on the form, to have the fluidity and also stability to be able to hold the form, but the fluidity and flexibility to be able to take on the form of multiple different personalities or, you know, emotions or feelings or expressions or groups, like that allows you to weave your way through the world more efficaciously, like more fluidly and seamlessly. If you're a person that's kind of like stuck in your body, you have like resting bitch face, you know, you just kind of
I
like,
do sometimes.
You kind of just like one face. I don't see that, but you just have one face that you kind of like hold on to. That face fits some puzzle perfectly, and you could find your specialized niche and it could work out well for you. And you might want to be able to fit your piece into other places in the cosmic universal puzzle of life. And for you to be able to do that, your vehicle has to be intelligent enough to be able to navigate different terrain, just in the form of creating attunement and rapport with other groups of people.
And how do you, like, what I'm hearing is adaptation, right? Like, I want to be able to adapt to whatever tribe, whatever community, whatever partner, whatever company I want to join. I want to be able to have the dexterity.
Yeah, and have empathy.
Oh.
You know,
and so
that's
you're saying
how
like if the body is too physically rigid, you couldn't empathize with someone else.
That's what Botox does. Like that's what.
Actually, I just was with someone this weekend and she's had so much Botox. Like her face was 100% frozen.
Creates a disconnection.
And I found myself not wanting to talk to her because I couldn't feel any feelings. I couldn't get a read on her.
She feels it too.
Like it's changing her emotional
landscape. So says science, and just feel into it. Like if you want to express a smile, I've actually had this experience with an ex-girlfriend who we were having some kind of something. I think we were actually using MDMA. We were having like an MDMA ceremony together. It was like incredibly beautiful, but a lot of emotions were arising and like things were like processing. It was like incredibly beautiful, like really like 5-star experience.
5 stars on Yelp. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
10 out of 10. But with the sensitivity of the addition of the MDMA, something that I remember her being able to notice, she was like apologizing that she wasn't actually able to connect with me to like a certain degree because her face was frozen. And so she, in that sensitized state, could feel, which like a sober, kind of more like dull type person, like with their senses, they might be like, oh no, it's fine. But she, in that state, just as a, N of one example, she could actually feel and was like actually apologetic. Like, I want to connect with you in this way, but I'm almost blocked a little bit because I can't really attune my facial features, which is the main way that we communicate to each other, to that specific frequency of emotion.
And was she being aware of your perception of her emotions, or she was saying it was affecting
it was just
her
within
emotional
herself.
experience?
Just within herself, yeah.
Wow.
But Botox also, if you are a person with like the resting bitch face, like there's a lot of research around this. Embodied cognition would be the fancy unnecessary term for it. But I mentioned this in my book. There's studies they did where they put erasers on the eyebrows, and they have you like squint against the erasers, and then they give you images of things, or
like pencil erasers.
Yeah. So
Okay.
put different situations in front of you, and like, how do you perceive this situation? You're like, ugh, like I'm bothered by this situation, because you have this resting bitch face, bothered face on. Similar thing, if you bite onto like a pencil or something, it forces a smile. Suddenly you start to have this more like uplifting type sensation. You're like, oh my God, like having this mechanical smile, like it's weird, but things seem a little bit more delightful.
Yeah.
And so Botox could be helpful to temporarily relieve oneself of a squint.
If you're scowling all the time.
Yeah.
Because then the scowl is telling you to be worried.
Yeah. So if they've got the RBF going, a little Botox could suddenly actually make them feel a little bit more uplifted, and it could block them from having the full gamut of emotion, at least expression of emotion and attunement and empathy with another person and themselves.
I have a friend who has that, where she says, actually, since I get Botox in my brow, I worry less because my face won't go into the worried position.
Correct, which is great.
And I think
you want to be able to fully express and feel the full gamut of emotions, as you know. So you want to be able to feel the depths of the pain and the sorrow and the RBF and all of that, in order to reciprocally feel the opposite side, which is the joy.
Amen. And this is something I really want to go into, of this idea that trauma emotions, if unexpressed, can get stored in the body. And really this idea of, and I think that would be a result of us not feeling safe in our bodies.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that, of like, with your work with private clients, with your work with celebrities, athletes, movie stars, like, how do you create a sense of safety in their bodies so that they can come into alignment, so that they can have that dexterity of expressing the full range of human emotions through the body?
That's such an interesting question. I think the first thing would probably be the same thing that you would do if you were teaching meditation or teaching breath work or anything. You're on a first date with someone. The first thing is creating rapport with the person. And the way that you create rapport with a person is to be kind of like that person. So you don't want to like push into boundaries too much. You want to kind of like mirror, but not like too much, a person's body language, a person's breathing cadence. These are things that you're consciously doing, or it's probably going to be weird. It's things that you're just organically, naturally will do. Typically we'll do that around like whoever's like the alpha. All right.
Or the person who has the highest heart rate variability.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I find this fascinating, the person who basically is the most adaptive.
Yeah. Which probably be like the most stable, like alpha, quote unquote, like alpha person.
Right.
Like, oh, they're the safest person.
Right. Because like if a tiger comes in, they're going to go into fight or flight. If it's resting time, they can rest. So like we just naturally start to resonate at their frequency. Like our hearts will mirror their hearts, even subconsciously.
And so things that like you could pay attention to things and write books about them, things like that, and call it like NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, or different things like that. But paying attention to like the way a person communicates. Does a person communicate really fast, really high pitch? Does a person communicate really slow, deep? They take lots of pauses. So finding like resonance with the person that you are in the room with is going to be the first thing that's going to be really important. If you're not able to find resonance with someone, it's going to feel like there's a little bit of like a conflict of sorts.
Well, this even feels like already a way to advocate for this work. Because if you don't feel safe in your body, if you don't have that dexterity, if you don't have that ability to have range, then you can't meet everyone. You can't create that sense of safety
It's really
or
hard.
rapport.
Yeah. If you feel the safest, typically most things track towards that. So if someone's feeling really anxious and whatever, and you're a person that you're like, I'm pretty well down regulated. I'm pretty deep in the whole like rest digest situation.
Yeah, stay
here.
and play, I like to call it.
Yeah, I'm in the stay and play. My language is kind of a little bit like slow and melodic, and my voice is deep, and it's almost like rhythmic and soothing to listen to. If a person's wigging out, that will be nice. It's not like you would need to put yourself into like a wig out state, but it could be supportive for that person to also feel like I don't have all of my stuff together either. And I actually have a lot of vulnerable chinks in my armor. And just so you know, like we're in this together, so that's something I think that happens in like the spiritual community is it's almost like we're using spirituality as a way to, bypass, use a word that gets used a lot, our problems, and our like humanity, because we're like transcend. It's like, oh, I'm not a human. I'm like this like God figure. It's like, yeah, but you also take shits in the morning, and you also have BO, and you fart and you make mistakes, and you have all sorts of weird things that. Oh, we got tunes. Nice. That was cool.
See, you're like, I'm a goddess. Angels are singing.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that was the universe agreeing or disagreeing with what I was saying, but
I think agreeing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think coming back to that humanity part is a really valuable thing. So coming back to authenticity and vulnerability and being willing to share the parts of yourself that are not perfect, that helps people around you to also feel safe to disarm a little bit. And now you can start to drop in and start to create even like a greater depth of rapport. So the sooner a person, I believe, can come into a place of like not forcing a vulnerable share, but like organically coming into a place of vulnerability and creating the safety and permission for another person, if they choose to elect the option to come into that, that will create deeper connection quicker.
And will you do that consciously with your clients when you're first working with them?
No, not consciously, but I read about these things and I'm interested in it. And if I were to write a book about like how to do a podcast, like I've done podcast interviews for the last while, and so it's a thing that's like an organic happening, but you could write a book about it and like break it down like, oh, these are some of the factors that you'd pay attention to. And so it would be more just like I'm putting it into language, but I think those are really important things to be able to create connection first. And then also it's like meeting a person where they're at with, are they more type A personality? Are they more kind of free flow? Do they have a bunch of crystals in their house? Do they have affirmations up on the walls? All of that stuff is really important information, which is for me, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, I've like, one in particular, I like lived with the person for half a year.
Whoa, 6 months.
Something like that, a little less.
And was this is Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was during the last season.
And this was part of his rehab because he had a really intense injury.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Tore his Achilles. Yeah. So that was, and that's a cool experience and really helpful experience to be able to like see how the person lives, because that's a big part of my lens on fitness and training is it's not just something that you do in a gym or a studio, but it's like, it's actually the fabric of who you are. So the way that you breathe, the way that you use your eyes, the visual cues that you have around your house, reminding you to do or not do certain things, the air fresheners that you have or don't have, the perfumes you're putting on or not putting on, the deodorants, like the pans you're using, the spatulas, like all these, the amount of light or lack thereof that you're allowing into your house, the windows that are open or not open, the amount of time that you're spending outside, or not outside, like all of that stuff is what's the building blocks of your connective tissue and your posture and all of that.
Okay, so when you go in, are you doing like a holistic assessment of all those things? Like, are you giving feedback on that, or do you wait for consent?
In a gentle way.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to go too much because you could get into like, it's like changing someone's diet can be kind of like changing someone's religion in a way, depending upon the person.
Yeah, one thing.
So if I were to tell like Paul Saladino he needs to eat more, broccoli.
I don't know who Paul Saladino is.
He's like a carnivore guy.
Okay.
He's a buddy. I love him. But if I was to suddenly tell Paul Saladino he needs to have more chlorella in his life, he'd be like, oh boy, here we go.
Right,
even if
'cause
I had
that's
a great point, it's like I'm nudging against something that's like almost like,
become a doctrine.
yes.
Okay.
So the way a person lives their life, it just depends on who they are and what they desire. If
If they're
they
telling
want,
me to stop meditating, I'd be like, no thanks.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just paying like, I'll shut up after this because I feel like I'm monologuing too much, but it's paying attention. Everything is, so I do body work, manual therapy, like hands-on body work. And so what that is it's a conversation with another person's nervous system through tone, communication, and pressure. So tone communication with like words I'm using and body language and all that stuff, and the environment that you're in, whether it's safe or not safe, as well as my physical pressure. And so what's happening within that is nervous system A, is presenting information to nervous system B with the invitation and opening to create change. And I can nudge enough to create signal for you to be like, oh, interesting. Wow, when my shoulder's in that position, that actually feels really, really good. And suddenly I can open up my breath and my voice changes a little bit. Like, okay, nervous system A. Nervous system B accepts your invitation. I received.
This feels good. I like this
feels
feeling.
good. I like this.
Okay.
But if nervous system A, me, therapist guy, is like too aggressive, too pushy, too forceful, nervous system B says, I thought maybe you had some good ideas, but this is a little bit too much, too fast. I feel scared. I'm going to shut the doors and now you're out.
Yeah.
So that's what you're always doing.
Which
right now we're doing it.
Come back to safety, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're
come back to
creating pain, if the invitation or the adjustment is creating pain,
Yeah.
and the brain doesn't really speak in language, the parts of the brain that do not understand language, they just understand pleasure and pain.
Right.
And so if the invitation is now painful, it's creating resistance. It's something I have to get over versus like something that feels charming and inviting. Like, oh, my body wants to accept this.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you, because I know you work one-on-one, like manual adjustment with some people, but not everyone in the world. You have a big podcast following, Instagram following, a book. How do you create safety in someone's body that you're not physically in the room with? Or how do people create safety in their own bodies?
That's a cool question. So breath, it's like the connection between the mind and body. It's literally like the deepest part of the brainstem, the medulla oblongata.
The breath.
Yeah. That's
okay.
That's why.
So breath is processed through the medulla oblongata?
Yeah, that's like that. It's why alligators get ornery as well. It's not Forrest Gump, sorry. That's a Happy Gilmore reference. You all know that? Come on, Happy Gilmore.
What's so sad is how much I love Billy Madison and how many times I've watched Billy Madison and I've never seen Happy Gilmore.
It's not Happy Gilmore. That's why. It's when Adam Sandler, Giles, what's the Adam Sandler movie with the where he's playing football? Waterboy. That's what it is.
Oh, I haven't seen that one either. Come on. I know. I'm just like Billy Madison all the time. It's my main Adam Sandler window in.
So it's the literal and like it's the literal anatomical and figurative bridge between the mind and body. So if a person is breathing in such a way where they're maybe stuck in their inhalation, right? So you exhale, how do you feel?
More relaxed. More dropped.
In real time. It's like 1-to-1. It's immediate.
Yeah.
You can change your blood pressure. You can change your HRV. You can change everything like real quick. And so that would be that's something I do before every podcast that I do, unless the person actively says, I don't want to do that, then I'm like, that's fine.
Oh yeah, you led us through. So I was just on your podcast and you led us through a beautiful breathwork exercise. It was like less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's quick.
Fully changed the state.
Changes the whole vibe.
Saw God.
It's crazy.
Came back to my body.
It's so beautiful.
So good. Do you do that before sex?
Yeah, sure have, but no. Would.
What? I mean,
sex is a breath practice.
It is, but if you do intentional breath practice beforehand, it's just like you're off to the races. It's like you're in a whole nother echelon of consciousness before you even start.
No, I've definitely done that. I've done things like, have the gal sit on you, I'm like cross-legged and do like breath work and I used to enjoy doing meditations in that position. That'd be a really nice thing. We'd like sit up, I'd sit my buns up, so my hips are up in a good position, and then she'd sit atop, and then we just sit there for like a 20-minute meditation.
Beautiful.
That was a nice thing. So I've done a little bit better, but
it's
not
a new
like,
Ziva offering. I like it. And like merging Ziva magic and Ziva meditation.
Like tantric breathing.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Great.
But no, not all the time.
Okay.
But it's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about how does someone create safety in their bodies? And you're saying through breath. Through the medulla oblongata.
Yeah. Yeah, not necessary to know or say, but yeah, breath.
Which is the bridge between the brain and the
Yeah,
body.
it's at the base of the brainstem, and so that's like it's the literal bridge. It's interesting, when you actually look at the anatomy of it. And when a person is exhaling, more anatomical stuff, it's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia is the term for what happens in the heart when you exhale. So when you're exhaling, you are augmenting the blood vessels in the heart because the diaphragm is starting to ascend. And so you're adding pressure into the heart during the exhale. And so you get a stimulus in the heart to slow things down. So the heart rate gets a little bit slower. So you're going more into that parasympathetic, calm, rest, digest state. And then when you inhale, the diaphragm is descending. It's stretching out the bags of the lungs. It's also stretching out the blood vessels around the heart. And it's sending the signal to the neurons in the heart that regulate it's kind of like the pacemaker of the heart, saying, oh, okay, we got to speed things up a little bit. All these tubes are getting a lot bigger. We're going to pump it a little faster. And that's sending the signal to activate that sympathetic side. So heart rate goes faster. So in real time, a person is able to modulate the way that they state, like their felt state, and actually like the pace of their heart just through controlling their breath. So if you're feeling stressed out, the first thing to do would be have a long exhalation. If you're feeling really stressed out, you've seen people like breathing into like a paper bag. So they're recirculating CO2.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these are mechanical, actionable, bottom-up ways to augment your state like in seconds. So that would be the offering that I would have to folks to start is just, I think it's really important with breathing for people to actually understand like the foundational principles of what's happening when we breathe and why we breathe, instead of just saying, do this 5-7-8 breathing thing, or do box breathing thing, or do Wim Hof breathing thing, or do holotropic breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in teaching people and myself like how to fish instead of like providing fish.
Yeah.
And so you can create your own breathing recipe of whatever you want. You want to hype yourself up a little bit, emphasize that, right? If you want to like down regulate and calm, do long exhalation, maybe even add a breath hold. Start building up your tolerance to CO2 because CO2 is going to start to build up a little bit. That's going to actually cause, and then again, I realize I'm talking a lot, but that's actually going to cause the physiology and chemistry of your blood to change, to become more acidic, raising in that CO2. It causes the hemoglobin within the red blood cells to liberate oxygen. So it makes your body more efficiently release oxygen to your muscles and to your brain and to everywhere.
When you amp it up.
When the opposite, when you slow it down. So, breath hold, CO2 levels start to rise, acidity starts to rise.
Holding at the bottom of the exhale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just do breath holds throughout the day. It's going to make you a more robust breather, a more robust respirator.
And I just want to make sure, because I think when most people think about holding their breath, they think about holding at the top of the inhale.
You could do that too,
but when you're saying it's like holding at the bottom of the exhale, so that the body has less oxygen, more CO2, and at this point, they're saying that the red blood cells, the hemoglobin changes in the blood,
changes shape to liberate oxygen. It's freaking cool. It's
to bring more oxygen into the blood, and then that fuels the muscles.
Yeah, it's called the Bohr effect. And so that's...
How do you spell Bohr?
Bohr.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a person's name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
White dude?
It's a white dude. Damn patriarchy.
My favorite is the G spot. We named the G spot after a German man.
Yeah, it's messed up. But this is cool because if we want to create safety in the body, a lot of people, so I actually have a breathing archetype quiz. We have a breathing program that's all based around mechanics, educating people around the mechanics, and then also practices as well. And we create an archetype quiz people can go through where they do what's called a Bolt score, where they measure their CO2 tolerance, and then they also measure their exhalation test, and then a few subjective questions. And within that, the baseline, like, ooh, you could use some help. We call that archetype the stressed survivor. Most people are in the stress survivor state whether they realize it or not.
I mean, look around at planet Earth. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so your breathing pattern is the foundation for augmenting your state. It's so powerful. It's like the biggest, ripest, fattest apple just sitting there. And we're doing
apple for what? Like of consciousness?
Apple for regulation of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reaching out to energy drinks and coffees and supplements and all these things. It's like you have access to God and, feeling whatever you want to feel for the most part, just by leveraging
LSD,
the power of your breath.
Eros,
Yeah.
orgasm, like you can do all of that through breath.
And what I was going to say with the Bohr effect stuff is with feeling safe, if your body is liberating oxygen, in a more ready way, a more easy, efficient way, then your body, you don't need to exacerbate yourself with a lot more breaths to try, like, oh my God, I gotta get more. You're not in this rapacious breathing state because, like, oh bro, like, we're good. We can fast on air. We're so efficient with our liberation. We're so open that we don't need to be in this greedy, reaching, contractive, got to get more air state.
Ooh, this is exciting because I believe that a lot of the challenges that we're facing as a species right now are a direct result of, the all be happy when syndrome, or like the acquisitive approach to happiness, that we can somehow consume our way to bliss and fulfillment. And I had never put those two things together of like, oh, let me consume more food, more money, more sex, more porn, more shopping, more whatever. I had never connected that to breath. Oh, let me breathe more because my body's not actually being efficient with the oxygen. But if I could slow things down, recognize even cellularly and with my oxygen and CO2 levels that I have enough, that could change the way that I am interacting with everything.
Wow. You feel more like interdependent, or independent, because you're like, oh yeah, like I don't really need so much. And I would almost guarantee, sorry for interrupting you, but I would almost guarantee if there was some way to do some study, which there never will be, but of people that are subjectively more in that state of like, give me, take, I need more, I feel unsafe, I need more safe. I would bet their breathing rate would be comparable to their state.
I bet we can do that. I mean, with wearables and body data monitoring devices.
But who wants to be the greedy asshole guy? Like, oh yeah, I'm like, that's me. I'm big take guy.
You could probably just look at like income or like hoarding levels, or but
maybe hoarding possibly, but income wouldn't be associated. I don't think. You can make lots of money and be totally at ease. Or not. It can be, money's not the issue.
Well, it's not about the making of it. It's about like, is it flowing or not? Like, is there a sense of lack and then hoarding from a place of fear?
But, it would just be very hard. But I bet just, intuitively you probably get it. Just be around people that feel like they're in like this place of like, greed, like I got to survive. I got to look out for me.
And would you say that the extreme opposite of this would be like an aeritarian or a breathitarian, someone who could live only on breath, and or maybe actually a better question would be, is the opposite of this people who can take their breathing rate down to almost dead for weeks at a time? You hear these stories of yogis and these advanced meditators that are basically like in an almost comatose state for weeks at a time. Is that like an extreme version of this?
I haven't been around that, but I've read about it, and yes, I would say that would have to be extreme. But I don't know those people subjectively enough to have like a meaningful perspective on it. But yeah, I would say that would have to be that.
Right, because I mean, you're slowing down your breathing, your heart rate, your metabolic rate so slow that like there's very little consumption of anything.
Yeah, or like the fella. What's the fella who lit himself on fire in Vietnam? It's like one of the most famous photos ever.
It wasn't Thich Nhat Hanh, was it?
No. It was. It was. I don't remember what his name is. Anyways, but it's like one of the most famous, iconic photos in the history of ever. And it was in the. It
was an act of protest.
Yeah, it was a protest. It was in the something square. I don't know what.
Tiananmen Square.
Tiananmen Square. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that would be kind of an example. I bet you that person would probably have pretty good breath control. For him to be able to hold himself in the state of such high level of non-attachment to all of the pain, all the sensations that would be arising as a product of lighting himself on fire.
Wow.
That would be a person who has probably a wildly regulated nervous system.
Do you know Lee Holden? Have you heard of him? He's a Qigong teacher, and we're friends through Mind Valley, and he did a documentary where he went around the world studying and interviewing like all kinds of masters, Tibetan masters, Qigong masters. And it's called like The Search for Superhuman or something. And I mean, the stuff that he saw he showed me photos. I mean, it's wild. Like people that could make their bodies invisible, people could set their bodies on fire, like stuff that you're like, no effing way is this real. And then it's like, well, I don't know that it's not real.
Yeah.
But it's just fun to sort of like I like to challenge my assumptions of what I believe is possible.
Yeah, right.
And I think that there's so many technologies that have died with the, murdering of all the witches and the lineages that have been lost. So it's like fascinating, just like with the rainforest, you just make one rainforest, how many millions of different medicines are lost with that.
Yeah.
I think similarly, when you eradicate an entire population of consciousness that has spells and breathwork and potions and ideas, like what have we lost? We don't even know is gone.
I think something that's interesting is you have obviously heard of the gal who gets in some situation and their daughter or son is in trouble and they can suddenly reach upon the strength of
lift the
Hercules
car
to
off
like
the
whatever, do some
baby.
crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So our nervous systems limit ourselves all the time. Like the amount of motor units that actually recruit to engage our muscles is a very small percentage of what actually could be recruited because we don't want to hurt ourselves. So it's kind of an interesting metaphor for some of the stuff that I think that like you're talking about, where it's like we limit ourselves based off of the barriers.
Conservation.
Based off of the barriers that we create to conserve ourselves because we're afraid of where I am now at this level of wealth, at this level of health, at this level of relationship, at this level of home and all of my environmental situations. I'm not dead. Right? I know that this hasn't killed me. Like this is safe. To push outside of that into another realm of what if I got a nicer house? What if I got a nicer car? What if I was in a relationship that, wasn't a dumpster fire? Like, do I deserve that?
Yes,
like this dumpster fire relationship
feels familiar, and familiar feels safe.
Right. So this feels like my mom. This feels like my dad. This feels, like what I know will not kill me because I've survived it for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Or whatever, however old a person is since their childhood. And so the nervous system is doing the same thing of like, I know that if I give you access to this much power, you're not going to blow a tendon. So this is what you get.
And do you think that the more people feel safe in their bodies,
the more powerful they become?
And do you think that they then will allow themselves to receive something that may have otherwise felt unsafe? Like you hear this all the time in manifesting. Like even if you want $1 million, if lack feels familiar to you and therefore safe, you're not going to let yourself manifest $1 million. If you want a healthy relationship, but abuse feels familiar to you and therefore safe.
Yeah.
So have you found people being able to manifest more in their lives once they're able to create that safety in their body through alignment, through breath?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, I don't have like, it's hard. Stuff like that's really hard for me to say, like intuitively, like for sure. And I, as you already know, I have a tendency of like trying to draw back to, could this be like measurable? And I also, have done ayahuasca 20 plus times and love meditation and breath work and, a fan of all the different things.
Well, I guess I was asking like in your direct experience, forget about like scientific studies, but like with your clients, with people who've read your book, in your own life.
I think that I wouldn't be able to say like, yes, for sure, because so much happens in a person's life to be like, oh, suddenly, you don't have
It was getting rid of Teflon.
Body. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to be like, like this is me. And it was definitely me, so pretty cool. But I think like, very clearly, if a person is experiencing tension and dis-ease in their body with regularity and inflammation, and like there's a guy, Moshe Feldenkrais, the Feldenkrais.
Oh, I used to study that in college.
Yeah, really, really cool.
So good.
He's like all of his books I'm a big fan of. He has a term that I like called parasitic tension. And so parasitic tension would be like, think of your body as like a house. And you have all of these lights, all of these circuits on throughout the house, bunch of light bulbs on. If a person's if they're stressed, or they're commiserating about the past, or they're projecting themselves into the future, or they're like not just like, like at ease with like, whatever, like this is good. I don't need anything else. I'm not tripping about yesterday. Tomorrow will come if it comes. Like, this is perfect. That like, boop, it like turns the lights off.
Chew.
And now suddenly we have all this extra bandwidth to start to create from the now. Yeah. And so that's a metaphysical and also physical, as you know, I like, to like ground things in the physical if I can, but it's a very physical thing where suddenly I literally have access to more energy because my traps release a little bit.
Because the stress was
my
a
jaw
parasite.
releases a little bit. Yeah, it's chumping all your energy.
It's taking energy from the lights in your home, which is your body.
You're pulling the light from yourself.
Yeah.
Light in the form of like electricity for this metaphor. And also like your body is light, so that too.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Just yesterday I did a podcast where we were talking about how like fear is the first suck. And if you can calm down the fear,
everything goes
then you can put that energy into the food and you can digest your food. And then if you can handle your digestion, then that energy goes into fucking, or like the creation, the procreation energy, that sexual energy, that life force.
Yeah.
And
you have
then
to be open to fuck well.
Open what, where, how? Like your heart, your
Everywhere.
energy.
Ideally your heart. But the heart opens the, all the other parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then if you can regulate that energy, then it's like it cascades and waterfalls into forgiveness. And then from there, friendship. So it's just, I would never thought about, but if you don't know how to down regulate, if you don't know how to get out of fight or flight, if you don't have a regular meditation practice or you're breathing incorrectly, then that fear is going to be so parasitic that you have very little energy to digest your food, to make love, to make friends, for forgiveness. And like, that's why this stuff is so important. Like, obviously I'm a big fan of meditation. You're a big fan of helping people bring their bodies into alignment and breath work. So when I was asking you about the show, about like, what do you want to talk about? And I was like,
my response was butthole sunning first, and then we'll talk about breathing.
Yep, we're gonna go right outside after
go deep
this.
On butthole sunning.
I was
practice.
Actually on a boat in Croatia with some hilarious friends of ours, and we played a game to see who could give the most convincing faux scientific, like pseudoscience explanation of why butthole sunning was a thing.
I could provide one.
A real one?
I mean, no, it's not real. Sunning anywhere in your body is great.
Okay, but like, can you give me like the deep pseudoscience on butthole sunning?
No, because there's not a lot of deep pseudoscience.
It's just real science.
I mean, sunning any part of your body is healthy. And I don't know, I mean, there's a very high incidence of prostate cancer. So I'd imagine exposing sun to those areas, like infrared light penetrates, I don't remember the exact number, but like a couple of centimeters in. So
you get your butthole up in the sauna, in the infrared sauna? Or just on the red light?
No, I'm not a butthole sunner. I'm joking. But sunning anywhere, I think probably, honestly, I think what would happen where there could actually be value in butthole sunning, one, just being in a happy baby pose is very relieving for the lower back and the hips and all of that. Two, many people carry a tremendous amount of shame in and around even the wild concept of having an anus.
Wait, you have one?
Exactly. I don't talk about it, but yeah, I do.
I am a Barbie doll. Yeah. I am a Barbie doll.
Yeah, seriously. A lot of people think they are, or are afraid to not be one. And so so in that, even if it's like a solo experience, this isn't a scientific, this is like a metaphysical thing, like psychosomatic, emotional thing. But I think be able to convincingly argue somebody that just being able to express that part and like show it and feel sensation, and feel photons and just be like, oh yeah, like this is a part of me, baby. Like show it to the light.
Even the warmth, like even just the sensation of the warmth.
All of that, be like, oh, you're kind of walking around like, oh yeah, I got a
little pep in my step, a little sunshine in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would actually be very valuable. Staying
with some friends at this priestess temple this week here in Austin, and we did this morning practice. We were doing breath work outside, and we were naked, and we were just like, yep. And we just like did some yoni sunning, and I actually felt like I was being penetrated by the sun.
I love that.
It was so beautiful, like not in my ass, but in my pussy, and it was so awesome.
It is penetrating you. That's what infrared light does. I mean, all the frequencies do. Infrared penetrates the deepest. It's stirring up your mitochondria.
And is it light, or you do that in a sauna?
Either way, the sun is just emitting that. Depending upon the sun, it's just emitting those specific frequencies. But the lights, the sun is emitting all of them. More of that's coming in dusk and dawn.
Okay.
And then it goes more blue during the day.
So I think we found the title of the podcast. Why isn't everyone butthole sunning?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be catchy. I mean, I don't think anyone needs to do it, but like if you did it, it wouldn't be bad. Testicles is different. Testicles, the Leydig cells exist in the testicles, which is like by far and away most of the testosterone is produced in the male body. And with that, there's some research done with rats. I haven't seen anything with humans, but I think that intuitively to me would make sense that having infrared light specifically, because it penetrates so deep, but like all the different type of light, actually penetrating and interacting with the cells that produce testosterone in the body, I would just intuitively think that would have effect.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got here, but I am into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to breathwork.
We're here.
You were very passionate about why is everyone breathing wrong. You go into breathwork classes, you go to yoga classes, you see people meditating, and you had a decent amount of like more than 10% amount of rage about people breathing incorrectly.
Yeah, you can tell I'm angry.
So what are people doing wrong? I lead breathwork. I'm not trained, and magic is happening in that room. But like, what are people doing wrong when they're breathing?
The mechanics of breath would just potentiate so much more from the breathing, and most people.
What does that mean? If you were breathing correctly, you could get more out of it.
All right. So, example. We talked about on my podcast before this, Align podcast. We talked about like that little plug.
I did. Check it out. alignpodcast.com. Is that the website? Keep winking at me. Iconically handsome. It was 7 weeks in. We might be getting close to an energy cock penetration, everybody.
Exactly. I received that. What was I talking about?
Who
Once
knows?
you said iconically handsome, I got lost.
We're talking about breath work and how if you have the correct mechanics.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Okay.
So hear me out. So we talked about Amy Cuddy, super
TED Talk.
Yeah, all that stuff on my podcast, the Align podcast episode, whatever. And in that, one of the things that she does in her power woman pose is how she calls it, that is actually a little bit askew, that would actually end up potentiating or recreating stress, is it's a flaring of the ribs. And so it's like, I'm a winner, like I feel good. Yes, like that is an indication that I won. And an even stronger, more powerful version of a winner would be someone who has the ribs in a position that's not chronically flexing the diaphragm. And this is like ubiquitous because most people are a little bit insecure and want to fit in and want to be perceived as being strong and confident. A girl wants to have big tits and a big butt and like be like sexually viable. A guy wants to have a big chest, and seem like strong, he can protect. What we'll do with that is we will end up cocking our shoulders back, and projecting our chest forward and putting our lumbar spine in hyperlordosis, pretty like maladaptive position. It's not
which
very
is like
strong.
Butt out, like tailbone
butt out, spine dumping forward, pouring our pelvic, like the energetic bowl of our pelvis forward, and splaying all of the energy of our dantian and our abdomen, all that stuff forward. It's like open channel, like a hose. So that's Eastern esoteric language. Also, just you're taking away the neutrality of the spine. You're putting your spine in actually like a compromised position where your central nervous system is saying like, this is dangerous. I shouldn't give you access to too much power from here because we might blow out a disc.
Right.
We need to lock it down a little bit.
Okay.
We need to send some stress into the body and compensate and hold.
Yeah, we're not safe, so we need to conserve energy.
We're not safe. We're projecting to be safe in the present moment because we want to be loved. We want to seem strong. We want to seem like we can attack and kill if we had to. If you're a guy, if you're a girl, it's typically not that so much. And so temporarily, we're pulling these gears and saying like, oh yeah, like I'm so safe and I'm so strong, but we're compromising ourselves in doing that because it's a front. And so what will happen with a person that's chronically in that position, when the ribs come up like that, that would be what would naturally happen on an inhalation of your breath. The ribs would start to externally rotate a little bit and like almost like flare a little bit. So you could just feel your ribs instead of me just talking about it. Put your hands in your ribs and just take a breath in through the nose. And then take a breath out. So you feel when you're breathing in, the ribs kind of flare up a little bit. All right, so that's a flexion of the diaphragm. When a person, many people are walking around stuck in a flexed diaphragmatic position, stuck in rib flare. And so they're stuck in the inhale. The inhale is sympathetic. And so they can't even like structurally get a full exhalation. They can't structurally completely release their nervous system. It's like interesting. When you start, it's like, oh, like interesting. Like I'm
stuck in fight or flight.
I'm actually stuck here. And I'm going to this breathing class, or I'm going to this yoga class, or I'm going to this whatever. And I'm not addressing like the foundation of what holds the breath. Ideally, I come to a point where
which is the body, the diaphragm.
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, a person can come to a point where the orientation of their body is, aligned in such a way that like I am just breathed.
Mm.
So now you get into like way and like effortless action. And it's like, oh no, like, no, I'm just breathed, baby.
Mm.
You know, it's not, there's no doing in
And you
this.
feel like that happens from the physical alignment. And once that happens, the breath is just flowing in and out like the waves of the ocean.
Yeah, it could happen from the physical. It also could happen top down. And suddenly you feel safe enough to not flare, and you feel safe enough to not pop your ass out and not shut your shoulders forward. And
So
like
you can
that.
change the physical body, which would change the consciousness, or you can change the consciousness, which
Yeah.
will soften the physical body. Which do you find is most effective?
Depends on the person.
Mm.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Both will. So ideally you're able to work from both sides. So if you're a person that cares about this, or a practitioner, or, you know, anything, you're able to come from the side of, okay, how do I make myself or whoever I care about feel safer? Okay, they're insecure about this. They, you know, they're worried about this. They have guilt about this. They have shame about this. All of it shuts the body down, shuts the diaphragm down, shuts their vocal cords down, your throat chakra, you know, shuts the pelvic floor down. This is like your womb and your energy centers, and like feeling like safe in the world, like the, you know, the root chakra. It all goes, you know, so the body is there's a guy, Buckminster Fuller, that created things called tensegrity models. And so with the tensegrity model, when you press on any part of the tensional network of these models, it's kind of like those things that you see at like a dentist office. You know, it's like a bunch of sticks held together with elastic bands. And it's like you press it together, it gets small. You open it up, it gets big.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an example of a tensegrity model.
Mm-hmm.
The body is like that, where if I create tension anywhere in the body, it's equally distributed through the whole entire system to hold that tension. So that's one tension that arises. Now this is a parasitic tension. Now my body's holding that tension if I didn't release it. You know, so I need to release it, and I say, oh my God, like I just felt some shame come up, and I'm holding it in my diaphragm. I'm holding my throat. I'm holding my stomach. Like, I don't want to hold that. That's going to become baggage. So we're going to feel into it. We're going to allow it to like move. We're going to allow it to manifest in language and words. We're going to allow it to manifest in tears. You know, the organs cry, the tears the eyes weren't able to or didn't feel safe to release. You know, that's paraphrasing and totally like pillaging a what's his name? William Oslo. I referenced him in the last podcast. You know, but so the organs are crying the tears that we don't allow ourselves to. Right? It's a really powerful thing when you're like, okay, interesting. That moment, I mean, I can feel like emotion coming up in me right now, just even like the idea of it, because I'm aware of how much emotion I still store in my body. You know, and there's like we all have that. And it's feeling safe enough within yourself, within your community, within your home, within your relationships, within your relationship with yourself.
Within your body.
Within your body. Yeah. To say like, oh
to
yeah,
feel.
like, yeah. And it not be something where it's a victim thing, where I learned that if I have heavy emotions and I express my trauma and my shames and my guilts and all of that stuff, I get prizes for it. Because, you know, like the victim thing card, I think can be a powerful thing as well.
But expressing the emotions is not victim card. If you feel them fully and let them move through you, that is the opposite of victim mentality.
Yeah, but it can be an act. Like there can be something I see on like social media, for example, where I think sometimes it's like it's like, oh, emotions are trending, I'm gonna like do emotions. But that's
lying, and that's like faux vulnerability, which is the opposite of feeling emotions in real time.
For sure. I just think there can be a shadow version of like vulnerability and expression as well, where it's almost like I learn that I get valued and I get accepted and I get validated by expressing my emotions.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's like even a higher echelon where it's just like, I just am, and what comes through comes through.
Yeah. I mean, I recently heard that the path to enlightenment is feeling your emotions in real time.
Right.
And I mean, because then if you do that, then there's no time for it to get stored in the body. And how much of our therapy and our massage and our meditation and our breathwork and our psychedelics are unwinding all of the tears that we did not cry, all the rage that we did not express, all the conflict that we did not, go into.
I've had DMT experiences, just one recently actually, in Peru, as one would.
Are you even doing drugs if you don't go to Peru?
Yeah, exactly. But what was so powerful about it was I had an ex-girlfriend with me, and then two facilitators, and they like cleared out the whole maloca for me specifically, which is something very rare. Like it's something I very rarely am like even open to that. I feel it's very uncomfortable for people to like inconvenience themselves for me. And so that was a part of the, the medicine of the experience.
They did it preemptively or because something was moving through that needed space?
Preemptively.
Okay. Why?
Just because they wanted me to have a nice experience.
Okay. They were giving you private Maloka time because they wanted you to have a nice DMT experience.
Yeah.
And was it DMT like you were smoking it, or was 5-MeO DMT?
5-MeO smoking it.
It was 5-MeO.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, the reason I'm mentioning that is because that was a part of like the medicine of the experience of like me
taking space.
Taking space. Yeah. And it's like, I'll probably cry actually as I'm talking about it. I can feel tears coming up.
All of you is welcome here.
I appreciate that. I don't want to go too deep into it because I don't really feel like having like a full like emotional purge right now. But that was one of the aspects of the healing component of it. And another part of it was, the actual DMT itself. And what happened for me in that experience, it ended up being like a 45-minute process or so. I actually filmed it in like hyperspeed, whatever that's called, time lapse. But I went through the whole gamut of these sensations of sadness, and for me, it's a lot of sadness. That's a big thing that I hold on to more than a lot of things. And feeling like unable to like express my voice was one of the things that came up, and all this just like deep held parasitic stuff that I've had in my body since probably like I was a fetus,
baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more. Like it doesn't stop. Like we don't do ayahuasca for a weekend. Suddenly, like we've done it. And if someone seems that way, like be careful. But after that, the reason I'm sharing all this is I experienced more release in my thoracic spine, in my shoulders, in my neck, in my throat, like the levity of my entire body. I also did, a few ayahuasca ceremonies and another DMT ceremony during that. So it wasn't just that, but that was whoa, like that was crazy. But after that, I was able to, this is like a actual objective thing. I was able to hold a handstand, like a perfect, like super perfect upright handstand, and go into like deep thoracic extension from the handstand, in like with greater ease than I've ever been able to from smoking a little bit of DMT and feeling like cared for 45 minutes. And what that was when we have tension, we all have it. I still have it now. When we have tension of feeling that feeling of fear, guilt, shame, resistance, bracing, much of it will arise in the thoracic spine. It's like your shell, right? So if you—
And which part is the thoracic?
Middle 12th vertebra underneath the neck.
Like protecting the heart.
Yeah. So think if you were to get beat up and you're like, oh crap, like I'm just getting my ass kicked. There's 5 guys. They got me. There's nothing I can do. You will curl up into a fetal position and hope to God they're just kicking you in like the shell. That shell is where you store the shit, right? So that shell, you're energetically, literally and figuratively holding your stuff within that space, for most of your life. And
protection.
It's your protection, yeah. And so if you can feel safe enough to be cared for and feel safe enough to be loved and feel safe enough to be expressed, then suddenly that shell, it's like maybe the shell doesn't need to be as thick as I've thought it has. Maybe some of that hypertonicity or tension, hyperrigidity that I've had in my nervous system and, my thoracic spine and my ribs and my neck and my throat and my pelvic floor, like I never trusted it before, but I think I'm willing to trust. Suddenly you're like, wow, my breathing completely changes and I can get my arms up over my head and I can I'm like stronger. I have access to more energy in my body because there's less friction, and I have more creative energy because my factory, my like biological human suit factory isn't just running on putting fires out all day. It's actually running. Like it's running itself.
And that parasite of fear and stress and protection is not zapping you of that energy.
And that parasite of fear, anxiety and tension, all that stuff, it is a physical manifestation. There's no way out of it. It's one to one. It's the same thing. It's not like woo-woo hoo-ha.
This is what I wish people understood about meditation and now around sacred sexuality, is that like people think that meditation is just like a cute bubble bath for your brain and like, oh, something I'll get around to when I
No.
have extra time. I'm like, no, if you are not handling the stress response in your body, it is manifesting physically. It is manifesting in your skin, in your organs, in your spine, in your fascia,
Yeah.
in all of you,
In your hands.
in your
Think
hands.
like if tension, think if you're like, I'm so mad, right? Like if
Mhm.
you were acting anger, you could actually put yourself into anger,
Yeah.
to the point that you feel angry.
Yeah. I mean, I was
But
an actress for
yeah,
20 years.
right. So
Yeah.
one of the things you would do is you'd like probably clench your hands up. Your hands are how you feed your child and how you like make love and how you massage and how you make food and how you
Make
make
art.
art. It's like these things are like, they're literally like magical wands of manifestation and creation. If you're holding fear and anger in yourself, like good luck being a creator.
Mm. And I think this is also why I'm so drawn to your work and why I've spent the past like 4 years working on Ziva magic, is that it's not just about the pleasure, right? Like the pleasure is the byproduct that happens from you having the bravery of expressing all the unexpressed emotions. It's like before I even let people touch pleasure, I mean, obviously they can do whatever they want in their own time, but like in this modality, before we ever go into the magnetize, I make sure that they have the tools to feel safe enough to feel the sorrow, to feel the rage, because it's like if you can move that, it comes up and out of the body, and you're making more space for the creation. You're making more space for the pleasure. And what I find is that most people have spent so many decades numbing their pain that they don't know how to feel the full capacity of their pleasure. And so if you want to teach someone to use their pleasure to pray, you must first equip them with the safety to feel the intensity of the sorrow and the rage.
Yeah. And a great starting point would just be come back to the breath.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, why isn't everyone, when we've talked about like how we create safety in the body, we talked a little bit about the mechanics of breath. The show is called Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? So like, why isn't everyone feeling safe in their body?
I mean, it's probably different for everybody. It'd be such like an individual thing, but um, the root of that for me and for, I guess I can only speak for myself. I think it would be, so for me, my experience growing up, I was referred to as mumbles for like the first like 12 years, 11 years of my life or so.
Mm,
And I like wouldn't talk. I was like practically mute in public situations.
mm,
And thankfully I had like my parents, they would like stick up for me a little bit, like, oh, he's just like observing, he's like taking it in. Um, and in that time, I think I felt a little bit like alienated from like the world. It was kind of like a feeling of like feeling like a guest in the world in a way. And like who am I? Do I deserve to be here?
They call you Bumbles because of the way that you spoke or because you were listening?
I just wouldn't talk much,
Mm,
And so if I talked, it was kind of like, oh yeah, which
uh,
is kind of funny that now I'm like a professional communicator.
yeah, like top
Yeah,
podcast.
and so that's like an interesting, like irony and twist. But yeah, so I have a lot of like love for that boy. It's very like, like looking back at him. But so I think for me, it was like a sensation of like, not like non-deserving, like, do I deserve to take up space here? Do I deserve to be here if I'm not providing something like a
Mm,
role? I think that's kind of a thing because we live in, a capitalistic society, which I'm a big fan of capitalism. I think it makes sense. And it's something where it's kind of this trading of like currency, value for value type thing. And I feel like that probably has an effect. It's like the medium is the message is a interesting concept or book where it's like the medium of what we're engaging in actually is the thing that's providing the information to us more than like the books that we're reading and the actual information itself. It's like
mm.
the culture that you exist in, the socioeconomic culture or the religious culture, or, the parental structure and all that stuff is informing us so much more than the actual like information that we're learning. So I think that that's a feeling that I have pretty regularly is like, if I'm not providing you something, I probably don't deserve to be here.
Mm.
And so I think that probably a part of that would be like an economic thing. But yeah, for me, I think that like early on, it was a sensation of like, do I belong here? and am I deserving to be here? And like, what's the value that I have to bring? Is just my beingness enough? And I don't think so.
Yeah, it comes back to like a baseline worthiness. Like, is my existence enough, or do I need to be contributing in order to have value?
Yeah, I need to do something, you know, but that's like, and I think that's like the beauty of relationship, you know, with yourself and, you know, with a intimate partner or friendships or whatever, but to be able to, you know, practice those interactions and be able to like, you know, me with like an intimate partner, for me, it's like, I don't need a girl to like do anything for me. Like if she gets me a gift, I'm surprised. You know, I'm like, oh my God, that's like so moving that you've like were thoughtful of me. That's amazing. But it's more just like her beauty and her magic and her expression and her dancing and her laughing and all that stuff. Like that is the gift. And so, you know, I think being able to like engage in that, like relearn some of those things, but it's a lot easier for me to do that with somebody else still than it is for me, I'd say. And that's probably common with a lot of people. Maybe more men. I don't know. I'm not sure if it would be a guy-girl thing.
I think it just manifests differently. Worthiness, I think, is pretty universal across all genders.
Yeah, the worthiness is different for guys and girls, I think. Like it's different flavors.
And so you talked a bit about, so if we want to find a pathway into that worthiness, into that enoughness, into that safety through the body, through the breath, through the mechanics of the body. Is there anything you could share with people that they could do right now as they're listening to this, next time they go into meditation, next time they go into breath work, that could create that sense of safety or enoughness or worthiness in their body?
Yeah, using your voice. You know, so exhale. You know, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to calm, chill, downregulate, like create space, you don't want to like sharpen the knife. You kind of want to like put the knife down for a moment. Emphasizing the exhalation, as I already mentioned, that's going to slow the heart
like
rate
elongating the exhalation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we do actually in Ziva Online. Like the first 3 days, we do the 2x breath is what I call it. Which is real simple. Just like doubling the length of the exhale from the inhale, just to like get that, you know, vagus nerve online.
Yeah. Anything that calms the body is going to be supported with vagal tone. You know, so the vagus nerve, you know, it's like vagus, like vagabond. It's like wanders the organs, innervates almost all the organs. 80% of the information from the vagus is actually coming from the organs to the brain. So they're afferent nerve pathways. So if it was a highway, 4 out of 5 of the lanes would actually be going up to the brain, sending all this amazing, precious information from the organs. Your organs are known as the second brain. They have as much, last I've read, they have as many neurons as like the brain of a cat. It probably depends on the cat, depends on the person, but you know, there are a lot of
organs have as many neurons as the brain of a cat.
Yeah, that's something I've read. I don't know,
but not as many as a human brain.
Not as many as a human brain, but a lot of neurons in there. You know,
which is like billions. We have like billions of neurons in our brain.
Probably trillions, but yeah, like a lot.
Okay.
You know, and it's very interesting if you think of that you know, big old wandering vagus nerve. 4 out of 5 of the lanes on that highway are actually coming from your body up into your brain. You know, so just kind of like reworking that concept of like, where are my thoughts? You know, like I believe, you know, there's like the skin brain connection and there's the gut brain connection, and I think it's just your body is your brain. Like there's no differentiation or disassociation from it. It's all just models for education that actually your body's like, cool, bro, don't know what you're talking about, but you know, continue on with your 2D textbook. That's fine.
But I either feel good or not.
Yeah.
This is why I believe in embodied manifestation, that you can't just manifest with your thoughts. I mean, you can. It's just way more effective to get your whole body, head, heart, and hoo-ha and pleasure on board as well.
Yeah. And so that's why like dance is the so says, I just posted something else on the Instagram like yesterday, but dance is there's research done at Albert Einstein School of Medicine where they were studying different activities to stave off cognitive decline, so dementia and things of the like. And they found that partner dance to music was the longest lever or highest leverage tool or technique or activity in order to actually improve cognitive function.
Wow. I'm glad we partner danced before the podcast.
Which completely makes sense because you're incorporating emotion into it. You're incorporating rhythm. You're tying also yourself to music, which is emotive in and of itself.
Community
connection. You're feeling a little nervous with a person. You're like having like a breakthrough experience. Like, oh my God, I did it. You know, and you're moving, you're circulating all the lymphatic fluids and just all the different things. Like it's like this electrical storm through your whole entire system. Yeah. So that would be a great thing if you're able to get a little wiggle in you.
Partner dance, but even not partnered, they're saying now
Just do
that
it with yourself,
dance is
too.
like
Just in general.
great for, it's like as effective as SSRI is for our depression.
Sure. Yeah. Exercise as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Major. And so, but partner is interesting because you're also incorporating touch. You're incorporating like, it's not just touch, but it's also like care from another person and physical touch. I wrote a chapter in my book, The Align Method, all around the value of touch, like how it affects your physiology. And one of the things in there, I referenced a woman called Tiffany Field from University of Miami. And some research she did was with babies that were born prematurely. So they're in incubators. Typically, it'd be like, keep them sterile, keep them untouched, let them get sick. They introduced 15 minutes of touch, like little baby massage, twice a day. And they found that just introducing that little bit of care and love and safety in the form of physical contact actually allowed the babies to digest more efficiently and repair and grow
Of
2 times as fast and
course.
be released from the incubators a lot faster.
Yeah, it does not make any sense to
And
keep them
we
separated
are in
from
like
their
a
parents.
touch deprived friend recession right now. I
Yeah.
learned the term friend recession in an article a couple of days
And
ago.
maybe a sex recession as well. Like
All of it. Yeah, I mean,
people
if
in
you
their
have
20s are having less sex than any other generation.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
that's really, really major, and I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of quiet suffering
Mm-hmm.
happening. I mean, I experience it myself, not to the same degree that I'm sure many people do. I have a lot of, good vibes too, but like there's definitely moments where I'm kind of like, oh, like, is it safe to express my suffering? Because if I express my suffering, that could potentially make me be like unattractive. Because like ideally the person is suffering. So the medium is the message stuff. Like the medium that we exist in is this like nuclear family, look out for yourself. Women can take care of themselves, men can take care of themselves. We'll kind of keep it separate. We'll have one dog, picket fence, 1.5 kids. It's like very
Not working.
nuclear separate.
It's not working.
Yeah. So there's so much separation infused into that. And what you see is people starting to harm themselves. You see people starting to ideate around ending their lives. You see depression increasing. You see anxiety increasing. You see people becoming really fat. What does eating mimic? Eating is almost like this like sensual, sexual experience in a way. So what I want is human connection. Like I want tribe and I want touch and I want to feel loved and I want to feel
Community.
safe because it causes my body to go into regulation and safety, and I can rest and I can digest and I can repair and I can create. When I feel disconnected, old like millennia old systems in the body are like, you're probably not safe. So we probably need to put you into a little bit of like a panic response.
Yeah.
And so that would be something that I think it's kind of like we need to buck the system in a way, because the culture that we live in within that is inherently a bit isolating.
Yeah. So it feels like we can create that safety in our bodies through our structure, through our breath. Then it's safer to connect to others. It's safer to connect to our community. And then we could, create heaven on earth, which is what I'm really here for.
Yeah, heaven or hell. It's like right there.
Oh, I like that. Like we could create hell with our breath. We could create heaven with our breath right here, right now.
Yeah. I don't know if breath. It'd be hard to create hell with breath. You can create. You can recapitulate trauma with breath. Like you can bring yourself into.
You go into panic states with breath
For sure.
You can hold your breath.
But it's not so much the breath as much as like the setting or the setting that you're at. So like if you start to bring yourself into like a panic response with like hyperventilation with breathing, but you're in a safe place, it actually could be a really great way to bring some of those deep
feelings
held
up.
sensations up to the surface and be able to process them in a safe container.
Like BDSM.
Like BDSM.
And that's what happens in our retreats. It's wild. It's like, I'm sure you see this in breathwork, where it's just like the amount of healing that can happen through the breath is really such a miracle.
Yeah, it's I don't know how it works exactly. I don't think anybody really does.
Nope.
I mean, I can take stabs at it that like, again, it like intuitively makes sense. Like I feel like, a lot of things are hard to cut with the scalpel of science and like lay out perfectly and be able to like explain, which means to flatten, plane, like to create plane. Some things just aren't planar in nature. And so sometimes we have like the wrong tool to describe. And so it's like, we were talking before on mine about pre-verbal times. Like probably a lot of things, we were probably better communicators in some ways pre-verbal, because our communication would probably be like incredibly honest.
Well, I also think we might be going there again. Like some people hypothesize that with AI, we won't need our brains to store or process information anymore. And so all of that cognition, all of that consciousness will be available for extrasensorial communication. So it's almost like all of us could be on mushrooms all the time and communicating telepathically, like feeling each other like this giant mycelial network. That my friend Jerry hypothesizes that it will be similar to the surgeon consciousness that we have when we discovered fire. So all of that energy that was needed to pre-digest our food before fire. I guess fire is pre-digesting the food. Yeah, so all that energy and blood and that we needed to digest food before fire then went up into our brains. So we had this huge surgeon consciousness language, cave drawing. We could like build on top of previous generations' knowledge that we're going to be facing a similar surgeon consciousness now with AI, which I think is very fascinating and very hope-inducing. Well, Aaron Alexander, I could talk to you all day long, but I know you're moving. I'm going to the airport. So let's start to wrap this up. Is there anything you wish that I had asked you that I didn't?
No, I enjoyed that.
I did too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, last question. If you could install one code into the species, like wave a magic wand over the whole planet, and everyone just immediately starts like believing something, doing something, understanding something, what would it be?
Let go of any resentment, shame, guilt. Like life is way too limited to hold on to grudges towards yourself, towards anything.
And so it is. So where can people find you?
Well, people are interested in the breathing related stuff. So we have I don't know when this will go out, but we're launching this program that focuses heavily on the mechanics. So teaching like downloading the information of like, here's how to mechanic well. That comes out
on like a day-to-day breathing, or like I'm going into breathwork breathing, or
all of it. Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So figuring out the basic fundamental mechanics of how to inhale, exhale well. And it's, starting with the pelvic floor and the respiratory diaphragm and the shoulders and the rib cage and all of that stuff. And then it goes into breathing practices as well, but it's really focused on the principles of how to do that. So the whole intention is like teaching people how to fish instead of providing them a bunch of fishes in the form of like, do this exercise, but like, cool, I don't really know why I'm doing this. My very strong preference would be for people to become like breath alchemists of sorts, where you're like, oh no, like I can create magic with my breath. I can augment my nervous system in whichever direction I choose. Yes. And I can teach other people how to do that.
Yes. Beautiful.
So that's the purpose of that. If people would like to check that out, that's at alignpodcast.com/breathe. There's a 7-day trial of it. And then if you want to take the breathing archetype to see where they land in that, that's alignpodcast.com/quiz. So you go through like a short little quiz and find out if you're a stressed survivor or a air alchemist is like the high one.
There's two types?
No, there's three.
What's the other one?
Yeah. We're actually going through the potentials revamp with that. I think it was regular respirator was the middle.
Okay.
So regular respirator would be like a person that's like, they're like doing all right. They're not really trying that hard. They're just kind of like naturally pretty decent, but they could do a lot better. Okay. I think I kind of fall into that category. Not with breathing. I'd be higher on the breathing scale, but just in general, I'm like, I think you could do better, bro. I kind of have that like ongoing. I'm like Aubrey Marcus in that way a little bit. He's just more successful than I am, but in that sensation of like, you could always do better. Come on, bro.
All of us.
A little bit more.
All of us.
Yeah, but it can be a little haunting. I think there's like a light and a shadow side to that. Ideally, we're in the light side of that, where it's actually like, a wind underneath our sail, as opposed to something
torture.
like torture. I'm kind of more in between with that. But yeah, alignpodcast.com/breathe if they want to start the 7-day trial. alignpodcast.com/quiz if they want to do the archetype quiz, which would then eventually take you into the actual trial of the program.
Okay, beautiful. So we'll put those links in the show notes. And you're also really generous on your Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Aaron Alexander.
Aaron Alexander.
Yeah. And then Align Podcast, YouTube. And I think that's pretty much it. We do TikTok too, but I'm not. TikTok's just a perpetuation of the shorts on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, sweet friends, if you enjoyed this show, if you learned something, which I certainly did from this iconically handsome human. I would say screenshot this, post it on Instagram, tag us at Aaron Alexander, at Ziva Meditation. Let us know what were your ahas. We make this to be media as medicine, to get these ideas out into the world. And so I really appreciate your time and your attention. If you want to share this with friends, give it a 5-star review. Let us know in the comments what you learned. It really goes a long way to create the reciprocity and to get this media out into the world. So I love you, I love you, I love you. And I will see you next week on Why Isn't Everyone